Call them change makers.
Call them rule breakers.
We call them redefiners.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Redefiners. I'm Hoda, a leadership advisor at Russell Reynolds Associates, and I am here with my phenomenal co-host, Simon Kingston.
Hi, equally phenomenal, Hoda. Great to be with you.
Before we get started, just a quick reminder to our listeners that you can find all episodes of Redefiners and the Leadership Lounge on YouTube. And if you're currently watching Redefiners on YouTube, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button below so that you don't miss an episode. And for our audio listeners, don't forget to rate Redefiners wherever you get your podcasts. We absolutely love to get your feedback. Simon, today's conversation focuses on a key topic that we've been covering that is the potential to continue to redefine and at least impact every aspect of our lives, business, and society. AI.
Yes, Hoda, AI. It's a subject that must be on every leader's mind as they try and wrestle with the implementation of the technology, both to gain efficiencies, to enhance the quality of their business, and ultimately to grow revenues. A few leaders, I think it's fair to say, have jumped in with both feet and are making it work for them. But I think a greater number in the work that we've done are still working out what it means for them, testing and in the experimental phase and working out where they can get most bang for the buck.
And I think we saw a very similar adoption curve with the digital transformation about a decade ago, where some leaders quickly figured out the process and value of digitizing their businesses, while others were a bit stuck in maybe more traditional workflows and processes, right? And I'm sure you've seen that with your clients. I certainly have seen quite a bit of that in the hospitality world with cruise and hotel companies that are perhaps figured out how to use the AI and the technology to scan through and scour through customer feedback forms, where maybe others are still doing it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, and we're seeing it in social impact too, where they're thinking both about the way in which they can achieve even better value for the scarce resources that they've got, but also thinking about the ethical dimensions of this, which loom large for quite a lot of social organizations.
Yeah, and I think we're going to dive in quite a bit today on the ethical piece. So today's guest can hopefully help us better understand how leaders can harness the power of AI in their business, especially when it comes to creating better experiences for their customers and employees.
That's right, Hoda. Our guest today is a serial entrepreneur. He's led companies both in the digital transformation and now in AI-led change. Louie Têtu is the chairman and CEO of Coveo, which is a global provider of artificial intelligence-powered business solutions for e-commerce, customer service, and workplace applications. And before that, he co-founded and served as chairman and CEO of Taleo, which delivers cloud software for talent and human capital management, and was acquired by Oracle for $1.9 billion in 2012. Louie serves on the board of Alimentation Couche-Tard, Inc., which owns and operates 16,000 Couche-Tard and Circle K convenience stores in 26 countries across the world. And he also, as if that wasn't enough, sits on the board of Petal MD, a leading cloud applications provider in the medical sector.
Louie, welcome to Redefiners.
Thank you, Hoda. Thank you, Simon. Great to be with you today.
So Louie, when most people think of AI companies, they typically think of the big tech hubs like Silicon Valley or Seattle in the United States. And your previous company, Taleo, was based in San Francisco. But Coveo is based in Quebec, Canada, which is quite a bit away from Silicon Valley. Do you see that as an advantage or a disadvantage being outside the typical tech hubs?
Well, first of all, Taleo was founded also in Canada, had a majority of its 1,500 employees in Canada. But if you look at whether it's Taleo or Coveo today, if you think about Coveo specifically, yes, we are a Canadian company, but we do 98% of our revenue outside of Canada. What I think is noteworthy here is that a lot of the AI, not all of it, but a lot of the AI, actually was invented in Canada. If you look at the recent Nobel Prize in Physics is Jeff Hinton from the University of Toronto, and Yoshua Bengio at the Montreal Institute of Learning Algorithms was actually also nominated 3 years ago. And so there's a lot of AI talent here in the country, and more importantly, is we've been in the application of AI In the case of Coveo, since 2012. That's when we started adopting machine learning in our platforms, in our search platforms, and personalization platforms for digital experiences. So this is where we do a lot of our research and development. We have close to 100 people working at Coveo. We are a Canadian public company. But again, we do it for large enterprises across the world. A lot of the brands have Coveo technology under the hood.
So we have established that AI is really Canadian. Good. Let's
I did not quite say it exactly like that.
Talking about you though, Louie, you've been a senior leader in the businesses that you've helped lead for a quarter of a century. And on the face of it, you move into those leadership roles very quickly after graduation. Was there a moment that impelled you into that kind of leadership and defined you, what we call on this podcast a redefiner moment for you that shaped who you became as a leader?
I think the defining moment for me, and might sound a bit like cliche, I was probably raised by a mom and dad who taught me at an early age that happiness is reality minus expectations, while frustration is probably expectations minus reality. And I don't aspire as a leader as being a very notorious person or whatever. I really believe in the power of teams, and I know might be cliche to say that, but I do have a framework for who I surround myself with. I like grit. I like curiosity. I like rigor and engagement. I think there are many things that we can do. I could be doing something else. But I'm someone who's been married 34 years and who's been pretty loyal to my partners over the years. And I really believe in the stick-to-itiveness of teams and having a common mission and being very resilient. Most companies, most people are not resilient. And I think we can take advantage of that as entrepreneurs. Always be the last one standing. So probably a combination of those moments and some core beliefs that took us to where we are. And then again, you tell me what the definition of success is. I'm still trying to find it.
I think there's a wide body of thought that would suggest you're pretty successful. But what's intriguing in these conversations that Hoda and Clark and I have the privilege of having is how often leaders refer to their families, refer to the foundation years in terms of the values that help shape them. So it's interesting that you reach for that so naturally.
I think fundamentally it starts with values. Just like when you build a business, business has a spine. A business has, yes, a mission and a vision, vision and a mission. But fundamentally, it is about creating a spinal system that people adhere to. In our case, I believe in three core fundamental values, which is, everything in a business is designed to ensure that customers succeed every time. And I think that's the externally facing value. Without customers, businesses are about revenues and customers. Everything else is a proxy to achieve that. And I think that's really, really fundamental. Customers must succeed. The second value to serve that is that you only earn trust when you deliver value. And then from an internal perspective, which applies both externally and externally, and internally, you just tell, and you just hire great people. I've mentioned that before, and you just tell them to do the right thing and help the team. I always tell people, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you need a team. And so in order to achieve that, you need to be always learning, always listening. You need to elevate others, embrace differences, because if you bring people in a room that, people talk about diversity these days. It's interesting, it's intriguing to me that, we've took diversity down to Excel metrics and all of that. Diversity should be a goal because only in diversity you find innovation. You don't find innovation and creativity and new solutions to problems by putting in the room people who think the same, look the same, act the same. It comes from human collision. So embracing others' differences and really then it's about getting people to take ownership, getting things done, and engaging and cultivating excellence. And if you just, I've just described what 70% of my job is.
Mm.
The rest is talking to people like you.
And you've given us a whole set of threads which are going to draw out over the course of the next 25 or 30 minutes. But just in terms of locating where you are now, you were right at the forefront of the digital transformation when you co-founded Taleo. That gives you an amazing ability to compare how leaders were prepared for that wave of technology-driven change with how they are now as they face into AI. And you're obviously part of that with Coveo. But as you think about those two waves of change and transformation, how well prepared do you think leaders are for AI relative to how they were then?
Not well, but more and more. I think AI. First of all, AI is not new. I wasn't the founder, contrary to Taleo, where I was the co-founder. I wasn't the founder of Coveo. I was the angel investor. And when I was at Taleo, we were public on the NASDAQ back then and so on. So I was still there. And I met Laurent, my partner today, the founder of Coveo in 2008, who was a search guy who was very strong in search and natural language processing and delivering large-scale search experiences and so on. And in 2008, he told me, he said, look at this technology. It's called machine learning. And Netflix uses that. And Amazon uses that, and Wayfair uses that, and they're going to revolutionize, the furniture industry, and so will Spotify and et cetera, because that was the very defining technology that turned digital experiences from content centric to person centric. This is your Netflix experience, right? Who's watching is the first question, and once they know that, they assemble content for you. You can search Meryl Streep. You don't need to, because they do a better job, right? They knew the entire repertoire and so on. So it was really a revolution in that space. Our thesis in 2012 was that corporates, whether it's corporate America or the corporate world, would wake up within about 5 years. And that by 2017, 18, every enterprise would adopt AI to deliver their digital experiences the same way Netflix does it for you. We were wrong. It took ChatGPT. If you look at the big picture, ChatGPT wasn't just the launch of generative AI. Of course it was. And it was a major event, took the world by storm, but it was way more than that. It literally woke up the world. It was the very defining, galvanizing moment where people woke up and said, well, wait a second. I can write a poem on my iPhone. and I could get it to, this is different, right? It's a different paradigm. I don't think companies, and it's very, to this date, it's very intriguing to me. If you think about the retail industry, they essentially witnessed Amazon using machine learning take over the world for 15 years. And honestly, they did nothing aside from a few larger retailers. Walmart did, et cetera. But if you look across the board, the adoption of AI, albeit so logical in an area such as commerce, didn't hit the imagination. Now it is, obviously, and it's going to revolutionize the world of knowledge. I always say that the transformation of technology over 30 years was about efficiency gain, using software to do faster, better, more systematic processes. Essentially, was essentially what software was designed for. We build data models, we program rules on these data models. AI finds the rules. That's the different thing. And then suddenly now we're in the world of proficiency gains, not efficiency. So if you have 10,000 employees, what happens when every employee can handle 30% more complexity, 50% more of the time, 90% faster? That's what we're talking about. And so the world's going to be divided between the AI adopters and non-AI adopters. And I always say AI or die. It's going to be the greatest competitive divide in business that we will have ever seen.
Why did it take some people so long to spot that potential? And what can we learn from that delay, as it were, in advising leaders on how to respond now?
I think in general, there's always a lag in technology adoption. And look, particularly in in Canada, I would say. But also the fact that it's hard. A company like Coveo we built one single platform. Coveo is one big platform. We didn't do custom code that applies intelligence into digital experiences in commerce and customer service, websites, or workplace applications. But it's one single platform. But it took us 15 years to build all the indexing, the search, the semantic layer, the relevance layer, and now all the grounding and the generative AI part and so on. And now we're moving beyond that to being able, for instance, to optimize margins in real time and all of that. Back to your question, Simon, I think it's the obscure aspect of AI that probably people didn't grasp, or most people didn't understand, that the very experiences that as consumers we go through all day, every day, from, again, Netflix to Uber are powered by AI. There are videos of Jeff Bezos talking about machine learning in 2006. But, as I said earlier, it's very interesting that it took ChatGPT as the catalyst, but I guess now it went the other way. I think it went, way beyond hype. And I think we're entering, in a way, a little bit of a phase of disillusionment. As the dust settles, typically reality stands. And now you sort of realize that markets are, and people are far more educated, because some of them tried and failed and experimented and so on. And so people are far more now knowledgeable about what it takes to make this all work properly. And that's obviously a big opportunity for applied AI companies like Coveo.
And Louie, on this topic of where the value is going to be created, as companies and executive leadership teams and board directors are thinking about the next 10 years, what should they be thinking about? And what advice would you give to leaders so that they don't maybe make mistakes that have been made over the last 10 years?
The advice I would give is there are a number of known use cases in the area of digital experiences. You will not be able to compete in areas such as retail, commerce, business-to-business commerce, in areas such as customer service, when an advisor at a bank can ask a very complex question, such as, what are the, for my client, what are the tax implications of a mortgage on a second home in northern Wisconsin, given the change of regulation by the city of XYZ and blah, 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 press return and get that answer. That's game changing. And you cannot underestimate the human augmentation associated with that ability. And of course, it's hard to do, and companies like us know how to execute on that. But you should not underestimate the ability that this will create. Again, I come back to my previous statement. What happens when suddenly people online can handle 30% more complexity, 50% more of the time, 90% faster? That's what we're talking about. It's the age of proficiency, not the age of efficiency again. And that's really, really, really profound. And so my advice is embrace it quickly.
And as a follow-up to this part of the conversation, what about responsible AI and ethics? We would love your perspective on this piece. And what should leaders keep in mind around the ethical piece as it comes to AI?
First of all, thou shalt not use third-party data. Netflix uses your data, uses what you click on, the trailers you watch, what you start watching, what you drop, what you browse, and et cetera. And they use the sum total of all the other 100 million users and et cetera. And that's where they find the patterns using machine learning to figure out, what you're going to enjoy next. But if you want to opt out, you opt out. So they're never going to go behind your back and et cetera. And so I think this is ethics, and I think it's designed for people. And again, it uses data that you can control, and you're agreeing to that. People want that experience and so on. And that's a great use of technology. I think in this day and age, what people expect from companies is one very simple thing. Don't waste my time. Because time is the most precious thing we all have. If they use technology to help me be more efficient with my time, I think I really appreciate that. If they do that now in a manner that if they try to do it to influence me in other ways, or go figure out things that breach my privacy and etc., I think I'm personally I'm violently against that.
Louie, let's talk about customer and employee experience. You've already mentioned the first of your values was to be dedicated to customer success. You'll know better than we do how fickle customers can be. One bad experience is enough to turn 50% of customers off straight away and onto other brands. The most recent polling that we've seen by Gallup suggests that employee engagement is low in the US and even lower internationally. So thinking about those two things, customer success and engagement and employee engagement, what for you are the great advantages, the great potentials of AI and GenAI in improving those results for companies?
Right. AI has the power, and that's been demonstrated in spades, to essentially create experiences that are extremely individualized, that are prescriptive in nature, and now, thanks to generative AI, advisory. What I mean by advisory is, well, we understand personalization, but actually I often talk about individualization because Madison Avenue has been using personalization for more than 2 decades, and it really meant persona. What I mean here is moving from persona to person. So if you have 1 million consumers, you should run 1 million stores, is what I'm saying. That's number one. AI has the power to drive prescriptive experiences. So not only catering to your needs, but anticipating, what you might need, and driving, recommendations and et cetera, and really suggesting alternatives and et cetera, maybe just like Uber does and et cetera. And then AI has the power now to create advisory experiences, particularly generative AI. So, prior to generative AI, you could go online and say, what is A? What is B? What is C? And get very profound content or knowledge or answers to that. Now with generative AI, you can go online and say, what is the difference between A, B, and C, comma, ... And given that my context is XYZ, which one would you recommend? Now, if you turn it around on the business side, AI also has the ability not only to individualize experiences that are prescriptive and advisory, but it has the ability to do that in real time so as to maximize business outcomes in real time. So I can, for instance, not only give you what you want and predict what you will want and give you advice and a really rich experience, but I can do it in a way that perhaps will maximize my margin for each and every consumer 1 million times a day. And that's the future of business. The future of business is a business of one, and the future of business is the ability to optimize, to maximize margins at every interaction. That's something that is not even humanly possible, which is why it's going to create such a competitive divide between the adopters and the non-adopters.
Do you think that AI is owned by a specific leader in an organization?
Every company needs to build the competence and the muscle. So you need a core competence, a core group of people, in my opinion, in every organization that understands AI, if only to understand where to apply it and how to prioritize, and then how to manage compliance costs, ROI, and understand use cases and all of that. But other than that, I think it will permeate everyone. Who's responsible for the internet today within companies? Is there a chief internet officer?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
If you look on the vendor side right now, every big vendor is trying to own AI, right? My AI is Salesforce. My AI is better than Microsoft and is better, in my opinion. It's much more a spinal ability, across. If you think about an enterprise, there are applications everywhere, there's data everywhere, and you need a spinal ability, in fact, both from a talent and a technology perspective to drive AI across your organization. And you just need people who understand the engineering side of things to understand, just like you have an engineering department that can understand how to apply physics principles and energy and electricity and all the rest. So AI is like electricity. What do you make of it? So that's how I would frame it.
Louis, that's a very powerful account of what's going on. And the implication of most of our questions so far has been asking you your view as an executive. But you've sat on multiple boards. You've moved from the board into the executive role and back again. What for you makes a great board? How do you go about thinking about its composition and how to define its success?
I love the question. I think boards are effective when, first of all, when they work together, and number two, when there's true synergy with the executive leadership team, and number three, when both teams agree on a common set of facts and the company strategy. When boards try to run the company, or get forensic, or think that they can show up every month or every quarter and understand as much as management does, that's when you start seeing problems. And I think it's really important for board members to understand that. People think, and it goes with the general statement that I'm a firm believer with this, as a preface maybe, that says, what's dangerous is when you know enough about something to think you're right, but not quite enough to think you could be wrong. And I've seen board members behave that way because they understand 98%. And I didn't say 90. They understand 98% of the business. But you know what? Every business is built in the long tail, in the understanding of the last 2%. Everybody can grasp 98% of a business if you're at it. The winning businesses understand the last 2%. I've believed that, all through my career. I've seen that true excellence happens in the long tail. And it's in the intricate moments that you win. It's in, we talked about customer satisfaction. It's not about satisfying 90% of your customers. Actually, in customer service, it's actually easy. People now talk about chatbots for AI and et cetera. And then the examples we see is, how do I change my password? Well, you know what? That's not where you make your money.
Yeah.
You make your money. You don't. Your cost in customer service is not serving the first 90% of the questions. That's easy. Where you lose customers is in the long tail. It's in the complex situation. You need to be there for the tough circumstances, not for the easy ones that are high volume. 90% of your customer service cost is for less than 10% of the customers, the issues. Actually, I would argue 95% and 5%. It's the 5%, but these 5% of customers are the ones giving you the most money, and they're also the ones that, will give you the most, effort, trouble, work. And they're the ones that will churn. Not the ones that you're trying to answer with a chatbot, how do I change my password? That's easy. And that's what, more sophisticated companies understand. So back to the board, I think when board members really understand that, when board members are humble and they understand that, no, they probably don't know as much as management. I work for a board. Their prerogative is to fire me tomorrow. And you know what? I'm only as good as my last quarter anyway, so I'm not naive. But that's the way, it works. So when you pick board members that are really work together as a team, are constructive and are humble and yet super competent, that have the background and the broad perspective and can work with management, that's where magic happens.
And Louis, are those sorts of effective boards, are they born or are they made? By which I mean, do you see a kind of click early on of complementary skills and experience?
Honestly, I've churned board members, not because they were bad individuals, but because they weren't catalyst for the magic. as a CEO, and maybe words are cheap, right? It's easy to say, but I generally feel that way. I don't look for a board that necessarily agrees with me or won't ask challenging questions, because I want to be the first one to ask the challenging questions, and I welcome them. But again, it always has to be constructive because we're in this together.
You've led 3 companies to either acquisitions or IPO. You were president and CEO of the Clan Group, which was acquired by BAN in the 90s. You went on to co-found Taleo, which was acquired by Oracle. And then you grew Coveo and took it public in 2021. Very impressive track record. For those listening, what advice or guidance would you give other leaders who are aspiring for similar success?
Business is challenging. And if it's not challenging all day, every day, if it were easy, others would do it. But you have to make the difference between unpleasant and difficult, right? And you just have to, as I said earlier, I believe in the word stick-to-itiveness or resilience or persistence, but not in a naive way. I really believe in the power of analysis. I coach businesses and I coach entrepreneurs, and I find a lot of businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs, they tend to drink their own Kool-Aid sometimes without proper analysis. I will say, as a matter of background, I grew up as a commercial pilot. I learned the difference between taking risks versus taking chances. Yes, you take risks. My engine, I can get a flame out on a turbine, at 10,000 feet or whatever. But I can manage that risk. But I don't take chances. We have checklists and we do our analysis, pre-flight and all of that. It's much easier to spend more time planning than, trying to plan during the execution. And I always think that if you don't know where you're going, there will be a lot of people along the way to tell you. So this is sort of some of the principles, but also the great is the enemy of the good. It's not about being good enough. You just need to be more agile and make mistakes fast. It's okay to fail as long as you fail fast, is what we tell our employees, and that I tell entrepreneurs as well. So lots of analysis, not analysis paralysis. Do it and do deep analysis fast. So the cycle time should be short. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go deep. And then act and try, experiment, and put the customer at the center. Just talk, listen to customers. They will tell you a lot.
Oh, they absolutely will.
Louie, we've reached the bit of the conversation which we call the rapid fire section. So we're going to ask you a series of questions.
Uh-oh.
So that our listeners get to know you even better. And your job is simply to answer them as quickly as you possibly can. Are you ready?
I guess I have to be.
Besides mail, phone, and calendar, what are the 3 apps on your smartphone that you can't live without?
Perplexity, Slack. I love Slack. And how about my card game?
Louie, who is a mentor that had the biggest impact on you?
Oh, I've had several, all the way back to when we took Bond public, and et cetera, to work with executives, from large tech companies. So I won't name a specific person, but I will just say that people who have lived the most intricate moments to me are the most helpful and the most intriguing, and I value that a lot. And one common characteristic between all of them is they're all very genuine individuals. That's probably the quality I admire the most.
Do you like to focus on the journey or the destination?
Oh, definitely the journey. I think most people focused on the destination, unfortunately, I find. And the journey is the rewarding part. I've had the opportunity to exit my first public company at age 33. And most entrepreneurs that I know that have exited businesses, talk much more about the journey than they talk about that destination. When you're 33, actually, there are not a lot of people to play with on Wednesday morning. But there's so much about keeping you alive, right? And building and being challenged. competing in a good way, right? Why do we compete? Well, because it keeps you alert, it keeps you engaged, it keeps you innovating. Those are all themes that pertain to the journey, right? What else would we do, right? If we weren't engaged and doing something, and yes, being challenged every day. That's life. So I think that's 100% the journey.
Louie, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I really remembered at one point, one of my mentors actually said, the one place in the world where businesses work super well all the time is in Excel. And he went on to say there are more fiction that have been written in Excel than in Word. I really remembered that because business is about adapting every day and changing and innovating and delivering value and so on. If I had my druthers, we wouldn't make annual plans. We would have 3-year plans and quarterly plans. And I think it's amazing how things change when you think long term.
What's your favorite way to decompress after a long day at work?
Hiking, skiing, flying, and maybe a bit of wine.
And you mentioned that you are a licensed helicopter pilot. Where is the most interesting or unusual place that you have flown to?
From Montreal to northern Quebec. And if you think about the territory of Quebec, there's only 7.5 million people. From Montreal to northern Quebec to north of the Bay of Ungava is further than to go from here to Florida. Flew to a place named the Torngat Mountains, but all through northern Ontario, north of Algonquin Park, and we actually went canoeing in the Arctic 3 years ago, which was quite interesting as well. So there's some fairly pretty scenery.
Oh, I'm sure it's beautiful.
And because our listeners are going to be enjoying this episode early in 2025, do you have any New Year's resolutions you're willing to share with us?
Oh my God. My New Year's resolution would be that I don't know that it's achievable, but would be to broaden everyone's perspective on the world in general. And I wish we didn't see the polarization and narrowing of perspectives that we're seeing right now. The world's becoming, very polarized. I think technology is a culprit, but my wish would be that people look at the world and with a much more multi-dimension and broader perspective, and I think it would make the world better.
Louie, that was a fantastic tour d'horizon of a very successful career, but also a very interesting mix of reflections on what your success has consisted in. That defining moment early on was really interesting, rooted in relationship, and that stick-to-itiveness that you referred to both in the teams around you in executive groups, but also in the boards that you've been part of and helped to shape the grit, the curiosity, the rigor that ran as a thread through a lot of what you said. The focus on customer success, the understanding of that as a value as well as a set of technology-enabled capabilities was extraordinarily strong. And the challenge that you posed to people in almost every sector where customers can engage with 30% more complexity, 50% more of the time, 90% faster. That's an incredible thing to absorb. On ethics, thou shalt not use third-party data is a rule that I think lots of us could reflect on. Don't waste my time as the focus of customer need, and a real understanding of that need as a leader to take risks, but not chances. And last but not least, AI tastes of maple syrup.
Louie, thank you so much for the wonderful insights and the incredible knowledge that you've shared with us. We've so much enjoyed having you on Redefiners. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Hoda. Thank you, Simon. It's been a very pleasant conversation.